It's now time for the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. Mike brings you great guests and interesting people from all across the globe. So sit back, relax, and enjoy another great episode of the Mike Wagner Show.
Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget, Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and over 35 podcast platforms of The Mike Wagner Show. Take The Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to The Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow The Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with motivational coach, writer, and author of several best-selling books, including his latest, 3 Steps to Conquer Internal Resistance. He's based out of Chicago, now currently living in Austin, and he's been a coach, writer, and author for about the last 15 years. He's been devoted to focusing, sitting still, also memory, and just a bunch of things as well, too, and, gives advice and also works with self-help gurus, and he was willing to go anywhere, try anything, and he also dedicates his life to understanding, exploring, and managing a lot of things, including what's happening with the latest pandemic in the States. He's committed to memory, concentration, speed reading, and more, which is very vital in this day and age. Live, ladies and gentlemen, from beautiful Austin, Texas, the guru of memory, concentration, and yes, speed reading, the 3 steps to conquering internal resistance, the very peaceful Kam Knight. Kam, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Mike. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we're so glad you're here, too. So you have a new book called 3 Steps to Conquer Internal Resistance. It's on Amazon right now. You're also a coach, writer, and author of several best-selling books. And your goal is basically to improve mental performance, concentration, and also speed reading as well, too, and many areas. And before we get into all that, tell us how I got started.
Yeah, so at a certain point in my life, I had an itch to write. It was an overpowering itch, one I couldn't resist. I don't know where this itch came from. It was just this thing that I felt like I needed to do. And what was interesting is that I was never a writer or liked writing, and English was not my native language. And to be honest, I wasn't good at writing. In fact, I sucked at writing. I had no business writing a book. But as I said, I had an insatiable itch that I couldn't resist, so I followed it. And at the time, I was really into personal development. I had come across these techniques while studying for the CPA exam. For those who don't know, it's called the Certified Public Accountancy exam.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, it was considered one of the most difficult certifications to pass. It had a 15% first-time pass rate. So I thought to myself, it might be worth my while to spend some time learning some memory and study techniques. And I had hoped that the time I spent on that could help me save more time in the long run. And to my surprise, it was a very good decision. It really helped me out. Not only did it help me out, but I ended up passing 3 out of the 4 parts on my first try. And the 4th part, I only missed by like 2%.
Wow.
And the way the exam was structured is that I didn't have to take the 3 parts again. I just had to take that 4th part, and I took that again, and I passed it.
That is amazing. And, of course, it took a lot, like with memory and everything. How exactly did you do that?
Yeah, so I learned different memory techniques like retrieval, as well as note-taking techniques like mind mapping that helped me organize and structure my thoughts and ideas and information that I was learning. And it was in the organizing and the structuring of it, and then also in the recalling of it, that helped reinforce understanding as well as the memory of it. And what was really interesting is once I started applying these techniques, I was like, if I had this earlier, I could have done much better in school. And it got me thinking, this intelligence, it's a bit overrated. Because when I grew up, I was conditioned to think that intelligence was this really big thing to have, and either you had it or you didn't. And if you didn't, it would severely limit your life. It would have a big effect on your career, relationships, and overall success. But then I realized that through this experience that if people learned and used the right techniques, then they can operate just as well, if not better, than the people that we call genius. Mm-hmm. It's just that geniuses seem to have figured it out on their own. But if we use the same information, we can operate just as well. So I started going in that direction, and it was one of those things, once you jump into the rabbit hole, you realize there is no bottom. You can just kind of go further and further, and so that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like I've heard that term a lot, going down the rabbit hole and never getting out as well, too. And, of course, in terms of memory and everything else, why shouldn't people trust their memory?
Why? Because as humans, we forget as much as 80% of what we hear, see, and learn within a few hours of hearing, seeing, and learning it. Now, that's not within the first few months or weeks or even days, but within the first few hours. And what's more is we rely on our memory to remember much more than that. We may come across a very valuable advice, important instruction, or painfully obvious fact, and think that it's just too valuable, too important, or too painfully obvious to forget. And sure enough, we forget. Then we do it again. We'll come across an even greater idea, even more valuable advice, and an even more painfully obvious fact, and think that this time it's just too great, too obvious, and too important to forget. And sure enough, we'll forget again. Mm-hmm. And not only do we forget the thought or idea, but we forget that we even had it. So we forget that we forgot.
Mm-hmm. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, and many of us live our lives like this. We're constantly forgetting new information coming our way. And so in a way, we're kind of living life where history is repeating itself in our lives because we're doing the same things over and over again and making the same mistakes over and over again. And it simply comes down to us forgetting.
Uh-huh. And of course, how does the mind decide what information to keep?
Yeah, so there's three main reasons for what the mind decides to keep and what the mind decides to throw out. One is that if information is presented in ways that the brain is built to remember, then it will hold on to that information. So a good way to explain that is, so anytime a memory is formed, grooves or tracks are created in the brain. You can think of these grooves and tracks like footprints or breadcrumbs that lead to a specific memory. The more that a thought or idea is repeated, the deeper these grooves or tracks get, making it easier for the brain to find or locate a specific memory. Now, what's interesting is these grooves or tracks, they don't deepen based on how important or valuable the information is. They deepen simply through the act of repetition. The more we repeat something, the deeper these grooves will get. This is the reason why commercial jingles are so easy to remember, because they've been repeated so often. But something important like a meeting can be forgotten at the drop of a hat. We assume that the meeting, because it was important, that we would remember it, but because so we don't repeat it, the information, and so it doesn't stick. So this is kind of one example. But another would be like using association. Our mind is built to record information, attach information that we already know to other information. So if we're taking in data or facts, and we don't do anything to link into other information, or our mind doesn't naturally do it, then it's less likely to remember it. So our brain operates a certain way, and it has evolved to take in, process, and store information a certain way. And if we can present information that way, then we increase our chances of being able to remember it.
Mm-hmm. And what's the most powerful memory technique a person can use?
So it was something I had kind of alluded to earlier when we started, and that technique is called retrieval. Retrieval is simply the act of recalling information that you have read, heard, or watched instead of rereading, rehearing, or rewatching it again. For example, I can give you a few different examples of what I mean. Mike, have you ever asked somebody to repeat themselves, and the moment that they do, it all comes back? Mm-hmm. They don't even have to finish what they're saying before you're like, oh, yeah, I remember that.
I've had that happen over and over, too, so it's actually very common.
Yeah, exactly. Or have you ever tried to recall a childhood memory, but you couldn't? But then you saw an old picture or toy from childhood, and everything surged back like you were there yesterday?
It's happened before, yes.
Yeah. So these examples illustrate that memories can be in our head, but seem like they're lost and forgotten. And the reason they seem like they're lost and forgotten is that we can't get it out when we want or need it out. So retrieval helps us practice getting information out. The more we practice pulling information out, the better our memory of that information will be. And it's really interesting, Mike, because for so long we've been conditioned to kind of put information in to our head. And this is actually quite easy and natural for the brain to do. But the challenge is that we never really were taught how to pull information out of our head. And if we never practice pulling information out of our head, then information just stays in there, seemingly lost and forgotten. And if we want to better recall things, we need to actually practice doing that.
Mm-hmm. And that's fantastic as well, too. It's something to concentrate on. We'll talk more about concentration, but first listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking our budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on themikewagnershow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, and over 35 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with coach, writer, and author of several best-selling books, Kam Knight, also CEO of Mind Lily here on the Mike Wagner Show. We talked about memory and how to improve, why people don't trust their memory, and more. And, of course, before we get to 3 steps to conquer internal resistance, we need to concentrate on some things and, tell us, why is concentration the most important skill anyone can develop?
Okay. Well, Mike, every few years, a new self-help expert or guru comes out claiming to have the secret to success, achievement, and growth. Some will say is you need to have certain habits. Others will say you need motivation. While still others say you need to master your emotions. Now, personally, I don't think it's any of these. I think concentration is the most important skill we can develop. Because without concentration, we can't do anything else. We can't read a book, listen to a conversation, pay attention to a lecture, or follow our train of thought long enough to figure out where it's going. Concentration is useful for decision-making, evaluating options, problem-solving, and even driving safely. In fact, concentration is important for relationships because if we can't pay attention to people, those relationships can go only so far. And even the things that experts say is the most important, such as assertiveness and having habits and motivation, well, they all require concentration to develop. So more or less, concentration is a big deal. It's a bigger deal than most people can imagine. In fact, it's bigger than even that. It's a skill that matters more than any other skill, and it's a skill that's key to developing any other skills. In fact, what's keeping people from where they are to where they want to go is not with the challenge of the outside world. In fact, most things in life are quite easy, like reading a book or even taking the necessary steps to start a business. What makes it challenging is all the internal stuff that's going on that pulls us in all these different directions, especially away from the thing that we're kind of focused on. But if we can figure out how to stop all that pushing and pulling, then we can be more focused and get done the things that we want more easily.
Mm-hmm. And can a person's environment influence concentration or focus?
Yes, absolutely. Environment has a huge effect on our concentration. In fact, many people may not realize this, but a lot of environments that we kind of experience on a day-to-day basis, such as the shopping mall or a bookstore or a hotel lobby or even a restaurant, there's a lot of stuff that was premeditated to create an environment that had you acting and behaving in ways that the person who set up the mall and the hotel wanted. For example, the types of colors that are being used and the smells, they all elicit us in very deep and primal ways to create a specific habit or behavior or even an action. And so if our environment can have such an influence on our habits, behaviors, and decisions, it can have a huge influence on our habits, behaviors, and decisions to concentrate.
Mm-hmm. And of course, for many people, their thoughts tend to wander all over the place, especially at a shopping mall or hotel or park. How can someone battle a wandering mind?
Well, one of the challenges with concentration is that what I like to say is it's like sedating a wild animal or training a wild beast. And the reason I use that analogy is because our unconscious mind, it comes from the wild. It came from over hundreds of millions of years of evolution in the wild. Whereas our conscious mind, the thinking mind, the human mind, has been around for only a few 100,000 years. So more or less, concentration is a battle. It's a battle between where you want to put attention and where your unconscious is designed or has evolved to put attention. Mm-hmm. And this is where that pushing and pulling that I had alluded to earlier comes from. And so the most important thing we can do is to understand that anytime you're trying to concentrate, in a way you're trying to battle another mechanism or another part of you that wants to do something else or is designed to do something else. Now, there's all sorts of exercises and techniques that we can use to improve our concentration. But I'll talk about one of them, which I think is the best exercise we can do, and it's the simplest one as well. And when it comes to concentration, it's the simple ones that have the most effect because the simple ones we can focus on long enough for the technique to start working. And that technique is called self-talk. Have you heard much about self-talk, Mike?
Well, self-talk is very common. There are times I have to say this. It's like I talk to myself a lot of times because I'm having a staff meeting, which is important to me, a staff meeting at 1. And, of course, self-talk can be on the radio as well, too, except, self-talking to you as well, too. So, that can be a self-talk in a way. So,
exactly. You hit it on the head. So we're always talking to ourselves. And a lot of the things that we're saying to ourselves are not the most encouraging or conducive. And it's really important to change our self-talk. And the more we talk in positive ways of the outcome that we want, the more we're going to likely to see that outcome. And if we talk positive about our concentration, we're going to kind of manifest that. And so what I really recommend people do is create a list of 8 to 10 statements that describe the change that they want in their concentration, and then to affirm each of those statements 10 times every day. And it may not seem like doing that could be all that helpful, but I just want to stress, and I can go on about why this is so helpful, but I'll just give one evidence of it, is that our words are powerful. They have a huge influence on our lives. In fact, majority of the limitation and struggles that we're experiencing in life right now actually came from the words that were spoken to us whether it was a parent or a teacher or a bully or a boss, saying that we weren't focused enough, we weren't smart enough, we weren't good enough. And those words over time created the limitations that we have. And all of us, at one time or another, were told that we couldn't sit still and focus. And those words went in and created the belief and identity of that. And now we're acting it out.
Mm-hmm. And of course, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
No, but I was going to say, too, there's also more books on concentration. And tell us about where can we get your books and what are the titles?
Okay, so my book, Concentration, is called Concentration, Maintain Laser-Sharp Focus and Attention for Stretches of 5 Hours or More. And my memory book is called Memory, Simple, Easy, and Fun Ways to Improve Memory. And they can get it on my website at mindlily.com/books, or they can go to Amazon and type in my name, Kam Knight.
Okay. And we'll also talk about your book, 3 Steps to Conquer Internal Resistance and more. But first, listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on themikewagnershow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, Apple, and over 35 podcast platforms on The Mike Wagner Show. Take The Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to The Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow The Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with the CEO of Mind Lily, coach, writer, and author of several best-selling books, Kam Knight, here on The Mike Wagner Show. He's born and raised in Chicago, currently living in Austin, Texas. And you have a new book called 3 Steps to Conquer Internal Resistance. And tell us more about that.
Yeah, so what's really interesting is when I was growing up, I wanted to do more things in life. And one of the things that I realized is that wanting does not equate to having. Just because I want something doesn't mean I will be able to take the necessary actions to get it. And I wondered why that was. Why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I had the desire to take action, but for one reason or another, I'm just unable to. And that was a thing that kind of was at the background of my mind for a long time. And I explored that with any time I started to have a goal or wanted to get somewhere or wanted to do something, or if I didn't succeed in a specific endeavor, whether it was at work or a project. And the more I thought about it and the more experiences I had, I started to realize that our mind is designed to keep us from moving forward. It's actually designed to keep us from growing and making progress. And what I realized is we have all sorts of mechanisms inside of us that are designed to hold us back. And it's at the end of the day, these mechanisms aren't malicious. They're just built to do certain things. And in order to do what they're designed to do, they will hold us back. And if we're not aware of them, we could be limiting our progress and success in our life without ever realizing it or know why it's happening. In fact, most people end up assuming that it's because they're lazy or they don't have any willpower, or it's some other reason related to how they just can't do it. But the fact of the matter, it's not that they're lazy or don't have willpower. It's just that there are parts of them that are stopping them, and because they don't realize what those parts are, they just assume that it's them and they can't get over this hurdle.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the other factors involved, too, with this, being limited, like past experience, family history, or, psychology, education? What are some of the other factors that are involved in this?
Yeah, there's all sorts of factors. There is our upbringing. Trauma plays a big role in our lives. Addictions play a big role as well. And when people hear of addiction, they think of to substances like drugs and alcohol. And that's one form of addiction. So we can be addicted to everything. We can be addicted to certain types of people, certain lifestyles. We can just be trapped in our habits. So these are all different mechanisms that have a benefit, but at the same time can be very limiting. Though there's one thing that's extremely important and very powerful that doesn't get a lot of attention. So if you'd like, I could talk about that as one of our biggest limiters.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead and feel free to do so.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned, we have all sorts of things that hold us back, like habits and bad beliefs and addictions and other areas and trauma. So one thing that has more influence than I believe everything else is our identity. And identity is an abstract concept that isn't easy to explain or describe. More or less, identity are characteristics that define you. It's usually followed by the words, I am. So I am studious, I am generous, I'm a fighter, I'm a photographer, I'm American, Brazilian, German, Kenyan, Indian, Australian. I am cool. And the thing is, we humans are designed to operate within the confines of the identity that we have formed or accepted. What that means is that the mind will make it easier to do something if it is in line with our identity, and more difficult if it goes against our identity. So it doesn't necessarily matter how hard something is. What matters more is if it's in line with our identity. And that's what really makes it hard or easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you...
Oh, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I'll just give quick examples to illustrate what I mean by identity. So 2 quick examples. Going back to teenage years, being cool was really important. It meant more kids liked us, more parties we were invited to, and more chances for a date. So as a result, many of us tried to associate or identify with being cool. And if we thought we were cool, our mind veered our attention towards things that were seen as cool, such as wearing the latest fashion. But if something was labeled as uncool, then our mind would make us avoid it like it was a plague, because we couldn't lose that identity of being cool, so we didn't do anything that was seen as uncool, such as studying, debate, or the chess team. Another illustration of identity in action is with that, do you remember the Apple commercials back about 10 years ago where they pinned a PC who was kind of an older, boring suit guy, and then there was a Mac who was like a younger, hip guy?
I remember that, yes.
Yeah, so that's the biggest play in identity in action, because Apple did a fantastic job of creating an identity of an app user. They created an identity that they were hip and they were young and they were free thinking. And they created an identity of a PC as somebody who was boxed in, closed off, and limited. And they said, hey, if you want to be cool and hip, Mac people buy that. And if you don't, that's a PC. And so now there's this big identity, like, are you a Mac or PC? If you identify as a Mac, you couldn't buy a PC even if you tried.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And on the other hand, Mac people, if you're a PC, Mac people annoy you to the point you would never use a Mac just to not be associated with that identity. So I know there's listeners in your audience who can identify with being Mac and PC and how they're very resistant to the other. And it comes down to identity.
Mm-hmm. Now, since we're on that subject, are you a Mac or a PC user? It just makes me think right now. So
it's kind of interesting. I've kind of become fed up with PCs just because of the challenges I've had, and they don't tend to work as I wanted. And even though I bought a really nice PC recently that was supposed to have a nice camera so I can do a lot more shows, the fan runs really loud and whatnot. But because I don't want to be associated with a Mac, I still can't get myself to switch over. Uh-huh. Even though I know I this whole concept of identity and how it could be limiting, yet I still can't break that boundary.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, you could also say that Mac is better to work with. And, of course, you complain about the fan. Is that supposed to make you cool?
That is true. So
I'm sorry. I had to say that when you talked about a fan that runs trying to keep cool, and I said, well, if you're a fan of the PC, doesn't that make you cool having the fan? So that's what I'm thinking of.
You know what? That's probably what it is. Even though I want to switch from a PC because it makes me cool, I'm sticking with it.
Well, I think I like to come out with something where it's between a Mac and a PC, and of course there's a Linux, but nobody's ready for the Linux yet. It's almost like that third party or that alternative, soft drink, soda, or whatever it is nobody really knows about. So, I just hope there's an alternative coming up soon to break the Mac and the PC mode. That's the thing. So.
Yeah, I think there is an alternative, which is a Chromebook, but I don't know if it's any better because they're just kind of sucking you into their own ecosystem. And yes, I know about Linux, but because not too many people are using it, not enough people are making softwares and programs for those systems. So if you use Linux, you're kind of on your own a lot of times.
Uh-huh. And of course, it sounds like it, too. And I had thoughts about going to Linux, but not as of yet. But getting back to the 3 steps to conquer internal resistance, and you talked about, some of the factors that held you back, like, the history, the experience, and everything else. Now, how will this apply to the current pandemic we're in right now?
Well, it has a lot of applications. I think a lot of what we've talked about has a lot of applications. So for focusing, I had mentioned as humans, concentration is a battle between our unconscious and what our conscious mind wants. And our unconscious has designed and been evolved to put attention on and prioritize certain things over others. And one of those things are threats. So we live in a world of threats, and anything that has a potential to affect our livelihood, it's going to draw our attention. And so because we're in this pandemic, a lot of people can't focus on other things because they're focused on this threat and how it's going to affect their life and how it's going to affect their resources, as well as their income and social status. And so this is going to be a huge block in their ability to kind of shift their focus on something that's going to be more useful and productive. And then how we respond as well is going to be dependent on our identity, because if we have an identity that we can't handle this, that we can't move on, that whatever job or career that we used to have, if it molded into our identity, for example, I'm an accountant or I'm a writer, and now it's requiring them to shift to something different, because, right now in business, there's a lot of talk about pivoting. And if they see themselves in their old career or as their old job, and they don't see themselves into a future career, they don't see that their identity could shift into a future role, then that's going to create a lot of resistance and difficulty and challenge. And with that, it's going to come a lot of anxiety and stress and just not a lot of good feelings.
Mm-hmm. And of course, just lastly, what are the 3 steps to conquer the internal resistance?
So the first one is kind of what we talked about, is to understand that our mind is designed to hold us back. And we kind of covered that in a little bit of detail. The second is to understand how that inaction manifests. Because if the mind's going to hold you back, it's not going to tell you that it's holding you back. So if habits are the culprit, the mind isn't going to be like, this thing that you're trying to do, well, it goes against our habits, so we can't do it. Or if the issue is identity, your mind isn't going to say, this thing that kind of goes against our identity, so we're just going to sit here and do nothing. Mm-hmm. That's not what happens. So inaction manifests other ways, and you have to be aware of how it's going to manifest. And one of the ways it's going to manifest is that you're going to forget things. You're going to forget goals that you set, action items on your plate, important meetings, and important appointments that are going to help you move forward. And it's because your old resistance is using the forgetting to keep you from moving forward. Another thing is that you will go into a heightened sense of preparation. Instead of taking action on what you need to be doing, you're going to be preparing to take action. So you'll go out and read a ton of books, watch a ton of videos, listen to all sorts of advice, and create a plan and rewrite that plan and take diligent notes and rewrite those notes. And you'll just spend all your time preparing instead of actually taking action.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to understand how your mind is like having you spin in your circles. And then once you understand how you're being led in circles, it's important to pull yourself out of it. And some of the ways is to understand that the way our human mind and body is built is that we can't make changes as fast as we're expected to or we want to. We need to take slower steps. And what I recommend people do is if they're trying to shift gears, make a pivot, or make some sort of change, is to focus on implementing or integrating one thing at a time. Don't go whole hog trying to do 5 or 6 things at once. Spend 1 week on one item and spend a week so it kind of integrates into your body and your muscles. Then the next week, add another item. So do the first 2 items and get them going and integrating. And then the third week, add another item. And to take a slow approach so we don't create a lot of massive resistance that is forcing ourselves to work backwards as opposed to forwards.
Mm-hmm. And that's fantastic as well, too. And tell everybody where to get the book, 3 Steps to Conquer Internal Resistance.
Yeah, so that book is a free book. They can go to my website at mindlily.com. And on the homepage, there is a place where they can enter their email, and I will send over that book. And I will also send over some additional information that has a lot more details, because some of the techniques require, really reading and seeing examples to truly understand how to move from where they are to where they want to go. And that book and some of the following information will be a great guide for them. And that one is free.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. Once again, Kam Knight here on the Mike Wagner Show, CEO of Mind Lily, also coach, writer, and author of several best-selling books. Thank you for your time. And just a couple of things here before we go. We'd love to have you back on sometime in 2020. And what are your plans, by the way, for later this year and into 2021?
My plan is I'm finishing up a course. So the book that I had put together, it's going to lead into a bigger course called Conquer Your Internal Resistance. And it goes really deep into some of the topics that we just touched on about why our high mind holds us back. I'll be discussing over a dozen reasons, how the inaction manifests, and I'm going to be talking about over a dozen ways that happens. And I'll outline a very detailed step-by-step way of how they can go from where they are to the new steps and the new actions and the new decisions that they want to take. And so that's really what I'm focusing on. And to be honest, I had a few trips planned. One was to go back to Chicago this summer and see some family, and the other was I bought a ticket to Dominican Republic and just to do a little bit of traveling. So I'm hoping things start getting better soon, so I'll be able to do those things.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, we'd love to have you back on and talk about more about these ventures. We'll talk more about, concentration, memory, and most importantly, speed reading, which I don't recommend at this time, the speed read 3 Steps to Conquer Internal Resistance as of yet. And speaking of writers and speaking of writing, who are your favorite writers growing up?
Who are my favorite writers? I would say that I was really much more into facts and knowledge. So I read a lot more, and I was really into science. And so I really read a lot of science books, but also books by some of the big thinkers in science, who was the one who passed away recently? He was, I believe, paraplegic.
Let's see. I'm trying to think. Let's see.
Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, that's it. He's the one that said billions and billions. Was that the guy?
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah, that's why I think. Yeah, it's like I know he said that, but I couldn't think of the name. That's the thing. But I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah, and I'm a memory guy, so this information should come off the top of my head. But the reason I had challenges with saying Stephen Hawking is because I didn't want to confuse it with Richard Dawkins, who is an evolutionary psychologist or scientist, and he was another guy that I really enjoyed reading as well. So Stephen Hawking and Richard Dawkins, two very analytical, science-minded guys who I really respected when I was reading their works.
That is fantastic, and I had some trouble trying to remember as well, too. I'm going to start applying the memory techniques after we get done here. And who you consider biggest influence in your career?
My biggest influence in my career right now? I wish I had a better answer. I wish I could say like a specific person, because I kind of had this mindset that I was going to figure things out on my own. I was going to do things on my own, because when I got into personal development, some of the stuff that I was reading, it wasn't really all that helpful, and it was a lot of information I was coming across was very surface level. And I got frustrated by that, so I threw it out to the side and told myself, whatever challenges I'm experiencing, I'm going to do it on my own. So I kind of got on my own path in this journey, especially with the writing. I wanted to kind of have my own voice into the writing and not sound like somebody else. So I tended to avoid having too many influencers coming in. But now in the long run, I'm kind of regretting that, because if I had a bigger influence of somebody that I could look up to and follow their path, I think I would have a lot more notoriety and a lot more distribution of my thoughts and ideas and my work. So I wish I could give you a concrete answer, but right now I don't have that.
That's fine. That's totally understandable. I'm sure it'll come up later. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
The best advice is pretty much the three main things that you asked me questions on and that we covered. One is don't rely on your natural mental processes to remember information. Just because you get a great idea or an important fact doesn't mean that you will remember it long enough to put it into practice. So either write it down or use a memory technique to lock your memory of it. The other advice comes down to concentration is the most important skill that we can develop. So work on improving your concentration, or at least understanding what draws or pulls it away, so you are not being led astray by another part of your mind. And then the other thing is that whenever you try to do something, no matter how much drive and motivation you have to do it, there is going to be a part of you that's going to stop you and hold you back. You hear the phrase that we are our own worst enemies. Well, this is more or less it, because of this internal resistance, these mechanisms that hold us back. And just because you have resistance, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or you just can't do it. You just have to understand what that resistance is, why it's there, and the things you need to do to overcome it.
And that is so true. And once again, Kam Knight, CEO of Mind Lily, author of 3 Steps to Conquer Internal Resistance and other best-selling books. Big thank you for your time, Kam. You've been fantastic. Looking forward to again soon. Learning a lot from you. And once again, tell us about your upcoming projects. What's your website? How do people contact you? And where can people purchase your books?
All right, great. So my name is Kam Knight. My website is mindlily.com. That's where you can get the free 3 Steps to Conquering Your Internal Resistance. mindlily.com/books is where you can get some of my other books, including Memory and Concentration that we talked about. My upcoming project is an online course that I'm going to put together on conquering your internal resistance. And if anybody would like to do one-on-one work or coaching work or do speaking, they can reach me at Kam, K-A-M, at mindlily.com.
That is fantastic. Once again, Kam, a big thank you for your time. You've been fantastic. Looking forward to having you again soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. Love you to have back on sometime in 2020, and we just love to have you back on. You've been great.
All right, good. I'd love to be back on. This was a great show, Mike. Thanks for having me on again.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and themikewagnershow.com. Please support our program with your donations at themikewagnershow.com. Join us again next time for another great episode of The Mike Wagner Show.